Testing, 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 testing. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome, everybody. Today is Wednesday, February 15th. We are at a work session of the Board of Trustees for Harlandale ISD. I am Norma Cavazos, School Board President. We are going to call the meeting to order. It is 6:16. I'm going to do roll call of my colleagues present. Mrs. Carrillo? Present. Thank you. Mrs. Limon? Here. Thank you, Mr. Mancha.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Moreno.
Present, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Luna is not here today. He sends his apologies. We'll be watching our live feed so that he stays informed of what is happening today in the work session. Mrs. Ortiz? Here. Thank you. And myself, I am here. We do have a quorum. Mr. Soto, would you let us know who's here from cabinet and staff, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, Board of Trustees, HISD family. This evening, we have our Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance, Mr. Richard Hernandez.
Here.
We have our Executive Director of Operations, Dr. Hinojosa.
Here.
We have our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Ms. Casey.
Here.
We have our Executive Director of Human Resources, Dr. Salinas.
Here.
And we have our Public Information Officer, Mariana Vieira.
Here. Thank you, Mr. Soto. Thank you. We also have Dr. Judy Castleberry with us this evening. Hi, Dr. Castleberry.
Hi, thank you.
Good evening. Agenda item 2, we have public comment. We do have 2 community members that signed up for public comment. Ms. Natalie Clifford is our first community member. Hello, Ms. Clifford, welcome. As a friendly reminder, you have 3-minute maximum to speak. The topics addressed shall be limited to those specifically included on the board's agenda. You do have a timer to keep you on track of the 3 minutes. We're ready whenever you are.
Okay. Good evening, Superintendent Soto, Cabinet members, Board President Cavazos, and esteemed board members. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Harlandale Education Association. We have several questions about upcoming items on the agenda for this evening. First, we are always supportive of opportunities for our students to access higher education and fulfill their dreams. The possible 1882 partnership with TAMUSA could be a great way for more of our Southside youth to enroll and persist in college. However, as we have seen in neighboring San Antonio ISD, if not carefully managed, 1882 partnerships can be disastrous. The biggest concern that we have is ensuring that the district maintains district policies and not simply grant the majority of decision-making control over to the external organization, which in this case would be TAMUSA. We would like explicit commitment from the district to maintain specific cornerstone policies so that the school or schools partnering with TAMUSA do not take over our campuses and we maintain democratic decision-making in those spaces. Secondly, regarding the possible District of Innovation plan for the 2023-2024 calendar, we appreciate the items being considered to maintain salary as well as conference period for teachers. However, many of our union members are classified paraprofessional or hourly staff. We still have many questions about the plan for these staff to keep their pay and hours if this calendar should be adopted. They do not wish to enter the summer or the following school year without that clarity. Rather, the sooner these details are clarified and explained, the better, out of respect for these employees. And lastly, we urge the district to consider a pay raise of $15 minimum wage for all hourly employees. Sadly, as we all know, the cost of living has risen tremendously, and we have seen many custodial and hourly staff, many of whom are highly talented, unfortunately leave our district because they cannot afford their bills. Please consider this option when beginning to approach next year's budget, because we know that these folks are those who keep our buildings running and our students safe and the school buses. Thank you all for your time and consideration of these items as always.
Thank you, Ms. Clifford. Thank you for signing up for public comment and bringing those matters to our attention. Next community member that signed up is Ms. Susan Salinas. Hello, Ms. Salinas.
Hello.
As a friendly reminder, you have 3 minutes maximum to speak. The topics addressed shall be limited to those specifically included on the board's agenda. And just like Ms. Clifford, you have a 3-minute timer to guide you as far as the time you have allowed. We're ready whenever you are, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening, President Cavazos, members of the board, Superintendent Soto, and the community. I am Susan Salinas, TSTA staff, speaking tonight on Senate Bill 1882 partnerships in the DOI. TSTA is in support of partnerships that allow the district to find other streams of funding and programs that will enhance the learning of students in Harlandale. TST is not in support of partnering with an outside group that will have complete control of a campus. I have seen how districts turn over their campus to a partner, lose all ability to have any say in what occurs to the students and employees. In one district, a partner is running the campus. The teachers have a different calendar, additional days of work, an extended day, a different handbook, and other items the rest of the district employees do not. The principal of the school is a partner employee. The employees have to follow the partner's handbook and not the district handbook. Teachers are written up for using their local and state leave under district policy because the partner's handbook says they have to give a 2 days notice for taking any kind of leave. So if you get COVID or your child wakes up with a fever, you're written up for having an unscheduled leave. In several districts where campuses are run by an outside partner with no district say, employees leave the district en masse. At one campus this year, where there are 16 teachers, only 4 have more than 10 years of experience. All other teachers have 1 to 2 years of experience. That campus has had a turnover for teachers for the last 2 years because of the way they are being managed by the outside partner. When the district decides to implement a partnership, TST is encouraging the district to write an agreement that states employees on the campus have all rights afforded to them under state law and district policy. We encourage you to form a committee with teachers, administrators, and community members to help review the agreement. This buy-in by the stakeholders will help the partnership be successful. TST also appreciates the invitation to be part of the District of Innovation Committee. This allows us to work together for the benefit of employees and students. The DOI plan presented tonight is one in which we are in support. We believe the district has allowed teachers and others to have a voice. The plan will be voted on this week by the DOI committee, and it assures employees will not lose pay and teachers will receive a 45-minute conference period each day with a shortened week. If the district decides to repurpose a campus, we hope employees and parents are told in advance of hearing it on the news. Employees are awarded the ability to transfer to a campus before any new employee is placed, and the same person delivers a message to the impacted campuses. We appreciate everything you do for the students and employees, and we will continuously work with the district so that it is successful to be here in Hardendale. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Salinas. Thank you for signing up for public comment and for the valuable information you just shared with us. Moving on to agenda item 3. The board will conduct a work session with the superintendent and staff. Mr. Soto, are we ready? Are you all ready to present?
Yes, we are, ma'am.
Okay, then moving on to agenda item 4. Mr. Soto?
Yes, Dr. Hinojosa?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, at the December 2022 board meeting, RVK was selected as the architectural firm to conduct the facilities assessment for the district. And this evening, we have Mr. Carr Hornbuckle. He's an associate with RVK who is going to present the information that they were able to put together regarding the facility assessment that was approved that night.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa.
Good evening, Madam President, board members and superintendent. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. As Dr. Hinojosa said, my name is Carr Hornbuckle. I'm an architect at RVK. You all may well know my colleague Heath Winrick from RVK. He sends his apologies that he couldn't join me here tonight. We've been preparing this information together, but he had to travel out of town for an early morning meeting tomorrow. So I'm here in his absence. I've just recently joined RVK, but I'm a native of San Antonio. And prior to joining RVK last year, I spent 15 years just strictly working in school planning and design with other districts here in this area. So this is something that Heath and I have enjoyed beginning to work on together. And I'm glad to be here with you all tonight to talk through some information together about your schools in the district. As the agenda mentions on the next slide, is there a click on this? Okay. There it goes. Really 3 topics to discuss tonight, starting with just some definitions of how do we differentiate between capacity and enrollment and utilization, which is really a comparison between the two. So with capacity, what we're really talking about fundamentally is the number of students per classroom at a given school, and therefore the number of students at that school. There's some considerations and factors to keep in mind when you're identifying a campus's capacity. One example is you may have a certain number of classrooms and the space that affords, but if your campus cafeteria is small, that can influence the overall capacity. You may end up having multiple lunch periods throughout a day, and so that influences how many students you would want to have at that school. Or another example is specific with like elementary schools, say, is some campuses may have a dedicated space to teach science or a computer lab that teachers cycle throughout the day. If another campus doesn't have that same dedicated space, your curriculum and instruction folks may want to assign a room to serve that purpose. So it reduces your classroom count, but it brings more equity across your schools. So you look at different factors like that when you're determining what that actual capacity figure is going to be from campus to campus. The utilization, that next word, really fundamentally is a ratio, and we look at that ratio in 2 different ways. One is what we would call a targeted utilization. So the target is really the utilization we want to use as a planning tool. This is how many students do we expect to be at a given campus. You really don't plan for a school to be at 100% utilization, because there are a number of programs that will operate with fewer students than your typical student to teacher ratio. These may be students that are getting special individualized instruction. On the other hand, it may be something like a high school band where you have a larger group of students in your band than you would in a typical math class. That may be how you're targeting what your utilization is, but the actual utilization is really that same mathematical calculation between the capacity and your actual enrollment. And so with enrollment, then you're really just talking about the number of students at a given campus at any given time. And with that idea of the targeted enrollment being using your utilization towards what number of students you would want to plan for to be at a given school relative to its capacity. So with those three words and their definitions in mind, what I want to do is walk through some data with you tonight that relates to all 13 of your elementary school campuses. And what I've done is I've put this together in such a way that we're using kind of your high school boundaries, Harlandale High School and McCollum, and those campuses that are north of Military Drive versus those that are south of Military Drive, simply so that we're not trying to look at all 13 schools at once. It just puts a lot of data on the screen. So I'm going to start with walking through some of these figures for the 8 campuses that are actually north of Military Drive. And then we'll look at the remaining campuses, the 5 campuses that are south of Military. So when I start here, these 8 campuses that are all located geographically north of Military Drive, their capacity that's been calculated totals about 5,600 students. That's the maximum amount of space that's available at all of these elementary campuses. And you can see there's some differentiation between a larger campus like Stonewall Flanders or even Adams versus some of your smaller campuses like Rayburn. So it's not one size fits all. Different campuses have different sizes. The sites may be different in terms of the amount of parking, the outdoor amenities. And so those are all things that affect a school's size. When we compare that to a utilization and enrollment, what we would target, elementary schools tend to have utilizations that are a little bit higher, a higher percentage. If you think about it with an elementary school, those elementary students spend the majority of their day in their homeroom with their homeroom teacher. They may have opportunities to take part in art or they'll go to PE, but for the most part, they stay together as a unit. When you get to your secondary schools, your middle schools and high schools, they have much more change throughout the day, going to different teachers, different classes, lots more electives. And so that utilization is typically lower because the students are just spread out doing more activities. So with an elementary school, there's no one set rule for what a targeted utilization might be. It could be as high as 90 or even 95%. It could be lower, like 80%. For this presentation tonight, what we're using is 85%. Part of the reason why we're using that number is that that's also the number that San Antonio School District uses for their elementary schools. I've done a lot of work in the past with San Antonio School District as they've gone through several different cycles of bond planning. And so it's just one rule of thumb to use to start with 85% as a target utilization. And if we do that, then we end up with ideally getting a target enrollment of 4,796 students across these 8 campuses. When we compare that targeted enrollment to where you are in terms of your actual enrollment, this is the data that's been reported to TEA for the 2022 school year. Across these schools, we were at 3,260 students. And what I've done here is I've just highlighted or brought more attention to those specific campuses where we have less than 400 students. It's just kind of a particular benchmark to compare to. And taking each of those enrollments into account, if we calculate our actual utilization, you can see here we achieve an average utilization across these 8 campuses of 58%. 3 of the schools have a utilization figure that's actually slightly lower than that average, and then the other 5 hit that average or above that. So that's kind of the nature of just having a range of utilizations. You can see sometimes, I think it's interesting in the data, even though a larger school like Stonewall Flanders, where it can hold 850 students, with where their enrollment is at 459, that's one of the larger enrollment figures, but because the campus is large, you get a little bit lower utilization rate. So you don't necessarily see the utilization and the enrollment both match up exactly because it's all variant based on the campus size. We also looked at For your reference, if there's any trend in terms of enrollment, we just looked back one prior year because so much enrollment has changed throughout the pandemic and quarantine. So this is just a year over year change at these 8 schools where we've seen the enrollment reports to TEA, how those numbers change and are influenced. And then lastly, we also looked at what the expenditure per student is at each of these schools. So you have that on hand to be able to reference sort of where we are in terms of the dollar cost at a given school. The average cost for these 8 campuses then is this 10,413 number figure here at the bottom. And what's highlighted are those costs that are higher than that average across these schools. I'll also just mention in passing that of these 8 campuses, 4 of them are actually split in such a way where your 5th graders, as they are leaving, they may go to 2 or even 3 of your middle schools. Ideally, that's something where you would be able to keep those cohorts together and they would all be sort of transitioning through to middle school and then on to Harlandale High School together. But it's just another factor, another consideration as you look at different campuses. And in the case, interestingly, in the case of Wright and Rayburn, their feeder pattern area actually encompasses homes on both north of Military Drive and south of Military Drive. So some of those families actually end up going on to, if they're south of Military, going on to either Terrell Wells or Kingsborough and then McCollum. So they don't even all stay within the Harlandale Middle School layout and Harlandale High School feeder. So there's a split across the whole district. So we have this same set of information for the remaining 5 elementary schools. When we look at those campuses, what we see there is their student capacity totals 3,800 students. At that 85% target factor, we end up with a target enrollment of 3,231 students. And where we are in the data that's been reported for 2022, we were at 2,288 students. So just about 1,000 students short. And what that represents is about an actual average utilization of 60%. Bel Air, Carroll Bell, and Vestal all fall below that average for these 5 campuses. And Vestal in particular is also below that 400 mark for the number of students. We looked at both what might be changing over time in terms of year over year, if there were any changes that were recorded, and also where we were on our cost expenditure per student. Now, with these 5 schools, the average is $9,815 per student. Vestal is higher than that, and that 10,816 is also on the higher end of the 8 campuses that we looked at north of Military as well. There's actually, go back one. There it goes. Gillette and Bel Air are also split across both middle schools, Kingsborough and Terrell Wells. And as I mentioned with Wright and with Rayburn, they have some families where their homes would actually feed into the middle schools and McCollum south of Military as well. So just want to, at this point for the workshop, just be able to share all of this data with you all for your knowledge. So with any future discussions that come up about capacity and enrollment, you all kind of have the facts and figures at hand. And what I'd like to do is just open that up for what other questions you might have for me.
Any questions? Mr. Moreno?
Yes, and thank you for being here in place of Heath. I know Heath always does a fantastic job. And I will say this is a lot easier to digest versus the initial one we had back in November. So we like your humbleness and your humility. So thank you.
Sure.
Now with this here, I'm kind of just curious, like, because I noticed that the one question that kind of gets at me, and you can definitely educate me, is when it comes to Gilbert and Stonewall Founders, they have like similar enrollment, but when it comes to expenditure per student, is that based off of what exactly? Could you share that?
Yeah, let's go back and look at that, except that the clicker has stopped. There it goes.
We have one at like 9,000, the other one at 11,000.
Mm-hmm. So let me see. So we have Stonewall Flanders here, 11,484. And you were comparing that to which campus? At the top. Well, I believe that expenditure per student often, most of your cost goes into your people. And so my guess would be that based on the enrollments being quite similar, you have a similar number of faculty. But I can also tell you based on the capacity that Stonewall Flanders is a larger school. So you will have more costs there just for the facility itself, your utility bills, your electricity, your power, that kind of thing. So that may be one factor as to why Stonewall Flanders does have that higher figure than what you see for a relatively comparable number of students at Gilbert.
And could that also be factored in, maybe we have certain special pops that are more populated in those areas versus the others? Are those also things that could be considered?
It certainly could be. I don't know that specifically for a fact, but that would be a good assumption or a good.
Because I mean, I don't know, Miss
anticipation.
Casey or anyone in particular can share.
I think one of the issues is we have quite a few pre-K students there, though that class size is about 17 to 1, where mostly it's 22 to 1. So you're already capped there, and we have probably, I'm going to estimate 17, 18 pre-K classrooms across both Findlay and Stonewall Flanders.
Okay, so then we do also include Family Center with Stonewall Flanders.
Yes, that's
Okay.
part of that number. Mhm.
Okay, so that makes more sense in terms of the numbers and then probably just the student pops, because I know we probably have more EB learners probably on that side, and maybe some more that follow into our special pops as well.
I believe we have 2 units at Stonewall, so that's also
Okay, that's true too, right?
paraprofessionals, teachers as
Yeah.
well.
Okay, so that makes sense. There's just more of the services are needed at those campuses. That's why the number of expenditures per student is higher. So it depends on the support and services that they need. So that makes sense. Okay.
Anybody else? Ms. Limon?
I was just asking Mr. Moreno about Columbia Heights, and there also there's a smaller school, but yet they're at 11,878, more than what Stonewall Flanders has right now. They're 11,484.
How do I
So it's like that's just a little confusing right now, right there.
how do I get back to the pointer? Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Well, I think in the data for Columbia Heights, what I see there is just that we have a much smaller student population there
Mhm.
in our actual enrollment.
Mhm.
And so mathematically, that just simply means we're having to spread our dollars that much more because you don't have the same, you likely don't have the same student to teacher ratios because you just have fewer students at that school. And so that ends up driving up the cost, the relative cost per each of those students. Does that make sense?
So I guess what that mean then
Yeah.
we're overstaffed there. Is that what we're saying?
I don't know that I would say you're overstaffed. You're just under, you're not able to utilize the facility in a way that where you're balancing out that ideal ratio of teacher to student throughout that school would be my guess. And especially when you look at that as a comparison to other campuses, it's one thing to sort of see any given campus in a vacuum. But part of why we wanted to present this data tonight is because I think it's also useful to just see how one campus compares to another. And so that's part of why I think with Columbia Heights being only able to support, around 300 students, 310 students, when ideally at that campus, you would have, closer to over 500 students. That cost per student would actually get closer to the average if this number grows closer to that number. It would bring that average cost per student proportionally down.
Okay. So then I guess with that too, I know we also shifted our dual language kids. So Dr. So Ms. Casey, I guess when it comes to it, it's like also salaries. I know sometimes our dual language staff are given, a little bit more in terms of stipends and things like that. Or is that incorrect?
They have a stipend, but they don't have additional staffing. They just have the teachers there have different certifications. So, and I don't know if a $2,000 stipend would make that much of a difference.
No, and I guess the big thing too, I think maybe with perhaps with people that are maybe unfamiliar, when you see the number, you're like, well, I'm spending almost 12,000 per student in comparison to 9,000. Doesn't that mean that the students are being provided with more resources, more support services? Is there a way that we can clear kind of that misconception, or is there a way that we can see that, oh, because you tell a parent that, I would fairly assume they would say, well, that's good. That means that we're spending more on my kids on this side. So is there a way to kind of clear that misconception? Because that might be something that could give our community a better insight into how we're utilizing the funds towards our kids.
So one suggestion I would.
That might be a loaded question, but it was just meant to clear things up.
I don't have this data, but we could come back and look together at how each campus compares in its ratios of student to teachers. Because I think that's another way of saying, well, yes, we're spending more there, but are we actually benefiting from your student to teacher count compared to those other schools? So that would be one set of data we could look at as another classification.
I think that would be crucial. And I don't know how much time I have, just because I know with the state of Texas and how they're trying to move money, and with school choice, the perception, and I'm speaking to a colleague today, was like, well, the money should go with my kid. And you're like, well, 12,000, 13,000, is that what we're saying is going with your kid to go to a private school or a parochial school? I think that would be something to definitely educate our community with, because we want to give them accurate information versus misinformation that I'm sure the state of Texas and our governor are going to be providing to our families.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mrs. Carrillo.
Yeah, I do have a question in regards to Vestal.
Okay.
Is that do the same 10,816? So does that go the same for Vestal as what you just shared with Mr. Moreno in regards to the bilingual, how many programs are there and how much is spent, because it is quite a bit. So I guess my question is just, is it the same thing that we just discussed with Mr. Moreno?
I think it is probably for very similar reasons. Also, with what I'm looking at in the data, I simply see the fact that, even when you look at Carol Bell and Vestal as a pair of schools, that differentiation in the number of students can have an impact on your cost. I don't know that that's the sole contributor. There may be other programs there that are unique at Vestal that differentiate it from some of the other campuses, like dual language. And that would also then affect that teacher to student ratio potentially.
Madam Chair, I guess, can I direct a question to Ms. Casey? Oh, Mr. Soto. So what programs would be there at Vestal that would cost, that would bring?
Basically, man, what he's trying to get to is there's a total number of population, and there's a total number that we're spending at that school. Majority of all these schools are basically the same in our elementaries. We offer the exact same programs north and south of military, besides our dual language academy that we spoke about at Columbia Heights. This number, like for example, Caribou and Vestal are a spitting image of each other. If y'all remember when we built them, they're the same campus, right? They just changed the facade of them. And so it's telling us in the first column, student capacity is 673. If we did 85% of 673, our target population to have enrolled in that campus would be 572, both at Caribou and Vestal. Right now, there's 400. If you see the actual enrollment, there's 400 at Caribou, and there's 359 at Vestal. So those 41 students, if you take 41 students out of that one school, which you don't have in Vestal, it takes away from the dollar amount that we're spending at that school. So let's just say we enrolled 100 more students at Caribou. Now, instead of it just being 41, we'd have 141, and that 9,754 per student, it would go down it'll probably go down to $8,000 that we would be educating that child. And that's what Ms. Casey alluded to. And Mr. Carr, I forgot your last Hornbuckle. Mr. Carr alluded is if we look at the student teacher ratio, that can give us a definite, but this is an overall picture of what we're spending per child, per campus right now. We have a student ratio. We do have a student ratio right now. And we can go back to the student ratio on that. But there's still, we're talking about custodians, you're talking about, you're still talking about cafeteria workers, you're talking about bus routes going that way. It is money that that campus is receiving to educate that child.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
maybe, if I may, another way of looking at that, if I'm just oh shoot, it happened again. If I'm just I don't know why that timer keeps popping up. If I just look at Vestal as an example, I could say at that campus, we're spending $10,000 per student. But another way of looking at that is that we're not spending that $10,000 per student at Schultz or at Gillette. So in terms of thinking about it, ideally, you could argue across our district, we want to be sure we're giving every child the same advantage. We're giving every child the same opportunity. And across that average where we're having to spend more, that also means we're not able to spend as much elsewhere. So that's another way of thinking about that. Not so much that this given school is benefiting from more cost, but this other school has the detriment of not getting the benefit of more to balance things out. That was everything I had to share with you
I
tonight.
do have a question, if
Okay.
I may.
Sure, of course.
Throughout all the time that I've been here, serving on the board for the community, we always talk about enrollment and ADA. And administration does a very good job of educating us what the difference is between enrollment and ADA.
Mhm.
This presentation talks about enrollment. So my question is, are we talking about the children enrolled in the school? Or are we talking about the children actually attending?
The figure that I'm presenting tonight is the enrollment figure that's reported to TEA.
Which means that out of that enrollment figure, I have to assume the number is even less of students attending each campus.
For your average daily attendance,
Mhm.
that may not match up perfectly to what the enrollment figure is.
Our enrollment figure would be higher than the actual daily attendance of these students at each campus.
I'm not 100% certain, but I believe that this is your PEMS number
Okay.
from your October snapshot. That's
Okay.
what I would infer this is,
Mhm.
because that's how that often gets reported to TEA. So that's what I'm anticipating that this is.
Thank you. I had that in mind all this time and I wanted to get a little bit of clarification. Any other questions?
If I may, one more.
Yes, Mr. Moreno, of course.
So based off of what Ms. Cavasso shared, so Mr. Soto, when it comes to things like this, I'm assuming the numbers would inflate like the total costs per student, since we're looking at how much is actually being utilized by the kids. And so in essence, are we saying that we're not being as efficient with the amount of resources that we're able to provide for the kids based on, I guess, what we're lacking in terms of the total enrollment?
You're on it, sir. You're hitting the nail on the head is if you look at this 85%, if you look at our enrollment, it's 12,000 and some change, maybe 12,100, Mr. Hernandez, top of my head, enrollment.
Yes, sir.
And our ADA is at about 10,000. So yeah, we're missing about 2,000 kids per day, but we still have to have teachers in that classroom. We still have to have cafeteria workers. We still have to have the buses running. Because we have to anticipate, and we're trying to get these children into their seats.
So, Mr. Soto, if I may, we have to conduct business in each campus as if those 2,000 missing children would be showing up to class.
Yes, ma'am.
So our expenses are going to be regardless of whether they show up or not. We have to function, that's campus has to function from top to bottom as if those 2,000 missing children daily are in attendance every day.
Correct.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mrs. Ortiz.
Okay, so clarify, the numbers that are on here were from the PEMS clerk. So this is ADA. It's not enrollment. Is that?
Enrollment. We get
Because
enrollment from
he was
PEMS.
saying, yeah, the PEMS would
When they
would be the
register us-
ADA.
No, registration also meant, when they register for Harlandale, it goes to our PEMS clerk as well.
Okay, so that was from the very beginning.
It's usually October.
Snapshot.
It's a snapshot,
October
and
30th.
that's sort of consistent across all 1,000 districts.
Any other questions? It's a lot.
It is a lot of.
I'm not someone that finds hard to speak or have words to say, and I can't seem to find enough because I'm just processing. I will definitely have to watch the video of tonight's work session multiple times because I will have questions that you may all have already answered, but like I said, I'm just processing, and I can't quite wrap my head around that's all I'm gonna say. Anybody else? No. Thank you so
Thank
very
you all
much.
again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And you will be hearing definitely from myself and I'm sure from my colleagues as well.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Be patient with us because we will have questions.
Yep. And we'll be pulling more of that data.
Thank you.
Like we talked about
Yes,
tonight. So we can
yes,
come back and
please.
talk about that further.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, since this is a lot of information and RVK is in contract, is on contract with us, would the board feel a little more comfortable if they just did a second presentation of this information?
When?
At the Monday's board meeting.
Doesn't matter for me.
What I was going to suggest is if at all possible, Mr. Soto, and with my colleagues' permission, if we could, I hate to say put a rush on any questions that we may have so that we can possibly get them answered, by the end of business day, if possible, on Friday. I know that doesn't give us a lot of days, but this is a lot to
Madam Chair,
think about. Yes, Mrs. Carrillo.
I apologize for interrupting. I'm just wondering, is there a timeline, sir, that we need to have in place in order for us to go forward?
Well, this was one piece of the timeline to have this presentation conducted. But again, if there's questions and clarifying items that need to be addressed, he will be available for us. So either we can have it presented again, or if y'all just have questions, I'll just get the answers from RVK and return them by email to all the trustees.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mrs. Limon.
And thank you for being here, but I know that you were looking at Miss Casey and our staff. Okay, can just our staff ask those can we ask them? I'm sure they know, the answer instead of bringing Mr. Clark back in, since in the contract. I'm sure our staff knows more than what's going on in our school. I don't know how we have to, he did a great presentation, but of course we have questions. I don't know how many, but I'm sure our staff could answer those questions.
Yes, our staff can answer questions that have to do with programs in the schools. What RVK was doing, ma'am, is giving us the basis on the capacity utilization and how it compares, what the comparison is to schools, and our staff did not do that study. But however the board wishes,
I can wait until you're done, sir. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, since he's on payroll, might as well take advantage of getting as much knowledge as we can from him before he's out of payroll. Then we can conclude to ask questions to our staff. I'm just making a suggestion.
Can we move forward with another presentation? Just to give us that one last bit of clarification.
yes, ma'am.
I would feel more comfortable. I don't know.
Oh, you can't take, you're gonna go on your board presidency.
Yes. So we'll see you Monday. Thank you. In the meantime, we will be emailing Mr. Soto some questions. Some of our questions may be referred to our cabinet and some of them may be referred to you. So thank you so much. Hi, Miss Casey. Give me 1 second, Miss Casey. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Miss Casey. This is agenda item 5, correct? Thank you, Miss Casey.
This is a brief overview over Senate Bill 1882. It is something we've kind of discussed briefly. And so I'll do a brief overview. Where you'll find in our agenda is we are looking at a policy. The first step is to adopt a policy that allows us to call for proposals, and it outlines the steps we have to take to pursue this. So Senate Bill 1882, it was authorized in 2017. And what it does is it allows districts to partner with higher ed institutions, private charters, private institutions to establish in-district charters. We can authorize organizations, and there's incentives for financial incentives and accountability incentives for districts. We are in a position right now that we do not have any schools that are in need of turnaround. So that would benefit us is the financial incentives, not necessarily the accountability benefits. What I did here is I highlighted in red the areas that we are interested as a district in pursuing. It kind of incentivizes district to work collaboratively with other partners. And the idea is we would expand diversity among schools. You heard people speak about student choice. You've heard the projections about our enrollment. And so one of our ideas is how do we give our parents options and have us choose Harlandale. We have projections for what we're seeing in elementary enrollment to impact us in secondary coming in the next few years. So our focus would like to be looking at a secondary campus where we can kind of partner with an institute of higher ed and we can provide an innovative campus. It brings diversity to schools. Right now, our schools look very similar. And so we're looking at a campus, possibly a secondary campus that could look different from others. Bring in targeted expertise and innovation and turnaround support, empower school leaders and partners, gives more students access to great schools. I mean, like we want our students here and all students to just have better choices, and then provide financial and accountability incentives. One of the things that we've had quite a bit of discussion about funding, and we've had some training here, is if you look at the left-hand bar graph, that is actually how the states fund charter schools. When you look at our funding, we have the blue and there's this gap. Well, what Senate Bill 1882 does is it provides the difference in that gap. So that's the financial incentives that we could recoup if we become an 1882 with an in-district charter. The accountability benefit, like I said, it doesn't necessarily pertain to us because we do not have a campus right now that's in need in turnaround or that's in improvement. So we're really looking at that as a financial benefit. The way it works is we have the district, we would authorize a partner to operate an in-district charter. And what we would do is the partner would have sole autonomy over personnel, curriculum, calendars, and assessments. That's something that you've probably heard, oh, they take control. One of the things that we've looked at in our research, which is a little brief, is that they would have an operating board, but they would answer to our board. We would design and we would determine what their accountability would be to us, and they would work under our direction and support. The partner manages the school and is responsible for student outcomes. So as a district, we could say, this campus is a C campus. The expectation is that in 2 years, you will be an A campus. That is part of the contract. That is the expectation. And we would hold the partner accountable for that. And then the school board, the school district and staff hold the partners accountable. That's kind of the way it works. And that's just kind of a very broad overview. Why would we do it? I think we all have we all have beliefs about charters, but why would we do it? Expand diversity among school options. More students have access to quality schools. That is something we want for all of our students. Meet the unique, specific, and diverse needs of our district. We know that we have the potential for growth. If we look south of here, we have the potential for growth. However, the secondary campus that's south of here is actually projected to show the most loss. And so and the other thing is that middle school that's projected to show the most loss actually has our 2 largest elementary schools feeding into it. So that makes us question why and what can we do to change that? To bring innovation and turnaround support. So we can partner with what we would like to do as a higher ed and look at what are options, what are some college exploration, career exploration for kids, but looking at an innovative approach and it based in research. And then provide opportunities for autonomy and professional development. They would look different. Their curriculum would be different. Their PD would look different from our other campuses, but that is the intention of the 1882. And then create sustainable and lasting change. This is kind of looking at it long-term. We're not looking for next year or the year before. We're looking at how do we impact our schools and our student success for the years to come. This is kind of what it looks like in San Antonio. I think we hear quite a bit about the negative stories, but we have 3 districts. If you'll look, we have East Central, San Antonio, and Edgewood that are operating 1882s. Within that, there's 14 partners. So some of the districts have multiple partners and they have multiple schools that are 1882s and then 42 campuses. Here, there's 19,000 students, the majority of them economically disadvantaged and at risk, but there's 11 high schools, 3 middle schools, 29 elementaries, and 4 pre-K. We are looking at a middle school. That's where we're projected first to see the biggest decline in a few years. So we capture the kids that are in middle school, then our potential for keeping them for high school, perhaps we can change what's projected. Here are some types. You could have a charter school, a nonprofit, an institution of higher ed, or a government entity. We are very interested in partnering with an institution of higher ed. That is our goal, looking at college, looking at kind of university prep, kind of that angle with families. And then if you look at that on the other side, we have 3 charter schools within San Antonio, 8 not-for-profit, the government is 1, and there's only 3 that are partnering with the institution of higher ed. So we go back out of the, 42 campuses, only 3 of them are partnering with the institution of higher ed. The types of partnerships are turnaround camp partnerships, which we do not qualify for. We have innovative partnerships and then new schools. Well, all of our schools are existing schools. So we would qualify under number 2, an innovation of an existing school. And that there are 33 campuses like that within the city of San Antonio. Now, what happens with us is we cannot do anything until we adopt a policy. So this policy is ELA local. You're going to have it here and we'll have it again later in the workshop. And then of course it will be an item on the board agenda. So basically what this policy establishes, and it's a very long policy, it basically allows for us and it outlines what the process is for us to partner. Without this policy, we cannot even explore or take the next steps to do this. So it establishes what the application process looks like. It gives us the requirements for the application. It outlines this is required for everybody that applies. The process for you to approve any charters that the committee that is reviewing this determines. That it also allows how does a district grant a charter, identifies the composition of the review committee. So there's a committee that will review anything that is turned in, I guess, if it is submitted for applications for us to review and select our partners. It identifies the standards for charter performance. The expectation is they meet performance measures that we would set, that you would set, that they would have to meet in order to maintain their charter. In the news, there have been a few charters in the cities around the districts around us where they have revoked the charter because they failed to meet those standards. Autonomy for the charter. I know we heard some of that today, like negotiating what policies and procedures they will follow and which ones they have autonomy on. And I believe that in partnership, we can negotiate that. And then details a process for breach of contract. Something's not working out, the partner's not working out. That is something, how do you break that partnership and how do you resume normal operations? Our next steps. The policy will be on the board agenda for the 20th for approval. Without doing that, without approving that, we can't move forward. This is also a model policy that TA has basically developed and authorized. If we do not follow that policy, we have to develop a policy and it has to meet certain rubric criteria. So we have gone with the model that TA has recommended. Then we would do a call for quality schools. That would be the next step. This is one of the things this allows for the policy allows for us to do this. It is basically collecting and evaluating partnership applications. It would be similar to an RFP. We would say, we're going out, we're looking for a partner. These are the things we're looking for in a partner. We want someone that has, a high success rate with students from economically disadvantaged households, or we want a partner that has experience with first generation students. So we would outline, similar to an RFP, what our expectations are, and then we would have applications and we'd have a committee that would review them. At that point, we would come to the board for approval. We would have a contract, negotiate the contract, and then we'd kind of move through the process. The applications required for us to apply for funding, but the way it would work is we'd have a whole year of planning. So our commitment to this is we'd have a whole year of planning. During that process, we'd have focus groups, bring in students. What is it that you would like to see in a school? If you could design the school of your dreams, what would it be like? And then you have parents, fifth grade, a lot of parents have really reservations about going to middle school. What do you want to see in a middle school? What are the most important qualities about a campus to you? And then high school, so we would have parents, we would have the community, we would have students. And so everyone would have input in creating this school. It's not this organization making all those decisions. We, of course, would have insight too. There are students, there are families. We definitely want to have input, but we understand that what we're doing right now is not attracting every potential student that could come to our campuses. That's why we're seeing our utilization rates at that level. So that's kind of what we would do. We'd have a whole year of planning, a whole year. We'd have committees working on this. This is not something that only one partner would do to another. It's something we would work in collaboration. That's kind of the spirit of 1882. I mean, if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. If I don't know the answer, I'll get it for you as we work through this.
Any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mrs. Limon.
I don't know if you will know this already, but
Okay.
yeah, you would, because there's some that already have partners. The partners, who would they be? I mean, who are they? Like any?
Well, I know Texas A&M partners with people. I think maybe UTSA might. I know I've heard of Democracy Prep. I know I don't know them all. I just heard of them in the news. So I haven't gone so far as looking at that. I'm still trying just to figure this part out. Mhm. But I can I can get a list of partners that are in San Antonio with the partners that I showed on this list. I think I could find I think I can find a list of those partners and get them to you.
I mean, just Lisa, we know that what direction you're going
Okay.
and what partnership you're looking at. So we can have an idea. So I can have an idea. I'm talking about everybody else. Idea what direction you guys are going to.
We are really interested, I don't know, Mr. Soto, in partnering with an institution of higher ed.
So it would be all the universities, colleges
Mhm,
in our San Antonio.
mhm.
That sounds good.
Did you?
Madam President,
Yes.
I'm curious, the implementation is just 1 year or is there an option to?
Oh, I'm sorry. It would begin that year.
Oh, okay.
So it begins that year. So we'd have a whole year of planning for implementation the following year and continued.
Okay.
So I should have made that clearer.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Moreno.
if I may. So I know we tasked Mr. Soto and his team to reach out and figure out ways to be innovative. And, this is a conversation that's been broached before. I am open based off of what you said. If it is a higher ed education partner, I think to me that is, definitely beneficial to our students. I know there's some caveats and some little nuances that we do need to have to work out. And I know it's all preliminary. What I'm just kind of walk with trepidation, because you see it everywhere, whether it's SAISD or Chicago ISD. And I know our friend Pedro was in both of them. But the idea is I don't want to turn it into a business. And I would hope also that we're recruiting not our own kids, because is that really helping us? Because then what's going to happen is we're going to have a hierarchy within our district, and that's not fair nor equitable. But I know that's not the goal of our team. So I don't foresee it like that. But I do want to see, or I would hope that, our team can actively recruit these students to, if we do proceed with that partnership, especially if it's something like in our backyard, like Tamusa, something that we could continue to grow and then hopefully, bring them back to us in some capacity. But that's the idea. I don't want it to be where we're just taking from, one campus on one side and then just moving them over there. And then everyone's going to have the feeling, well, that's the flagship. So that's the ideal place to go to. And then, it's not something that's going to be really conducive to a learning environment for our students. But, I'm optimistic. I know, Mr. Soto, you're doing everything you can. And I appreciate it. And based off what you shared with us, I'm really open to do whatever I can to support you guys. Because I know we need to do what's best for all our kids.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I have a question. And I don't mean to be Debbie Downer, but what happens to that campus if the partner doesn't meet expectations?
So my assumption, I'd have to do some research on it, but is that it would be, I don't know what the word is. Right, we would break the contract and then the district would resume operation of it.
And so that's exactly what I was thinking. So would that campus then turn into what it used to be, or do we look for another partnership in a higher learning?
I think that would be a board decision at that time, because we would have that option with this policy in place.
Okay.
But I think that would probably be a board decision.
Okay, but I like that we could have that option.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
I want to say there was one in the city that was just it was dissolved and they brought in a new partner. That's what they did.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I do have some questions, but I'm going to email those to you, Ms. Casey. And you may not have the answer, and by all means, tell me I don't have the answer yet. Well, I'll give it to you when we come to that part of the committee or the discussion. But thank you so much. Anybody else?
If I may too, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
Mr. Moreno.
And just for the benefit of all, Mr. Soto, if you guys can, I know there's some success stories, but then there's also some, like you said, horror stories. I mean, some of the campuses or districts that you mentioned are Ds or, F districts. So maybe on highlighting the strong suits and the strong examples, especially when it comes to the higher ed, because that's something that I think everybody would be able to relate to if it's there, tangible and visible.
I'm thinking we could make that part of our call, like documented achievement or documented success.
That was one of my questions. Thank you, Mr. Moreno.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Mancha.
since you mentioned middle schools, is there any way we can kind of, Mr. Soto, if I may, concentrate on 8th and 9th grade, since that's our highest dropout rate, and maybe create a school within a school where we concentrate on 8th grade and 9th grade? Because if we look at our numbers, every year, the highest dropout rate is between 8th and 9th. So we can concentrate on something. I think SAISD used to have it. I don't know, they still do. But I went to one of my ex schoolmates that we went to school together was a principal at one of these campuses. And he kind of gave me an idea of how it worked and how they were successful with it. And their dropout rate decreased for a while. And then I don't know what happened later on. This was before I was on the board. So it was an idea that they had where they created that school within a school.
Yeah, Mr. Mancha, just brainstorming back with me and Ms. Casey, we kind of threw out some ideas because we also see it with 5th and 6th. Ms. Casey says that those elementary kids, because my middle school was rough. As big as I was, it was rough for me. I was getting beat up all the time. No, I didn't get beat up, sir. But 5th and 6th, and so me and Ms. Casey kind of threw that out. But as she said, we're going to take community input, we're going to take student input, and then some business leaders. So we're going to have input as you're giving us input. We'll have board input. We're going to get this input to see what direction we take, if approved, because we got to change the policy first. This is just changing the policy. This is giving us blessings to say, you know what, go see what you can go find out for school innovation, and then we'll lay out those parameters.
It sounds great, sir. It's a few years back, Mr. Littlefield and I sat down with the permission of Mr. Madrigal at the time. And we did a survey on that. And we were having between 8th and 9th, we had a class of just in Harlandale district of 800 kids. And yet we were only graduating 300 and something. And that between 10th, 11th and 12th, that's where we were losing the majority of our kids. And that's why I brought that up. Because we had done that. I don't know if he still has that paperwork, Mr. Littlefield, but he did a wonderful job with it. And we presented it to Mr. Madrigal, but he never took it to the rest of my colleagues at the time.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Ortiz.
that was going to be one of my well, I had a couple of questions, but one of those things was the grade level that was going to be, if the first year of implementation, if we could look at 7th and 8th grade. And I don't know. So at the Southside ISD, I know that they have an intermediate school where they take their 5th and 6th graders, right? And then the 7th and 8th are not anymore. But I mean, I was just thinking, yeah, that the 7th and 8th grade might be something, but and we're going to be taking student applications. Or we're going to think about that
Ma'am, that's
later.
24, 25.
We're taking the breaks right now, man.
I'm gonna have to save my questions because a lot of them are
Yeah.
not there yet. So I'll save them on my laptop. That way, when we get there, I can remember what I was gonna ask related to that.
All we want, Madam Chair, is a pat on the back for us to explore. That's what we want. We want the okay to explore.
You know, we come and we say, let's think outside the box, let's think outside the box. And like Mr. Moreno said, you all are certainly thinking outside the box. So I'm overwhelmed with that. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Okay, Ms. Casey, are you on the next one? You're on the next
I have
Two?
the next, yes, so
Okay.
I'll just stay.
So agenda
here.
item 6, correct,
Okay,
Ms.
yes.
Casey? Thank you, ma'am.
So we are, agenda item 6 is to ask the board to consider and approve the amendments to our District of Innovation Plan. So we are looking at a 4-day work week, a 4-day school week, not work week, school week. And what has happened in our committee work and working with some of our partners is that we have found there are some areas that we have to adjust in order to move forward or to even consider that calendar. So one of the things that we're looking at with the District Innovation Plan is the exemptions we can apply for. So we have our plan that was already approved, and we're looking at amending the plan. So when we amend the plan, we don't extend it. It will still end in 2026, but we can amend the plan. And we're looking at making 2 amendments. One is minimum service required, and the second is planning and preparation time. So with the first one, the teachers are required to work a 187-day contract. And with this exemption, what we can do is they can work less days. We cannot change their pay or lower their pay, but we can have them work less days. And what we're asking and what our District of Innovation Plan will read is that the district will seek to align educator contracts to align with the calendar that is adopted and approved, not to exceed 187 days. Oh, yes, we are still in the process of finishing our District of Innovation Plan and meeting our final meetings tomorrow. So you have the handout, sorry. So that's the first one. The second one is planning and preparation time. So currently Texas Education reads, each classroom teacher is entitled to at least 450 minutes within each 2-week period. So that 2-week period is considering that we have 10 days. So what we would like to do is quantify that, and basically our exemption would read that each classroom teacher is entitled at least 450 minutes every 10 instructional days, because our weeks will be 8 days rather than 10 days. So we wouldn't meet that requirement if we left it as is. We are not taking any time away from teachers. In fact, teachers are going to have more planning time than they've ever had. But we do want to make sure we quantify every 2 weeks with every 10 days. The amount of time is still assumed to be 10 days, and it's still 450.
Any questions? Mrs. Limon?
About the hourly rate, how is that gonna help on that scale?
So once the board, if the District of Innovation Plan is approved, then we will do some final work on the 4-day work week. If that is approved,
Right.
then at that point, that's when the work gets done on pay and salaries and that sort of thing. I don't know if.
Yeah, Ms. Limon, Dr. Salinas has been working on the hourly because again, they get paid per hour, right? They're not salary. So she's been doing some homework on it. Dr. Salinas?
Yes, thank you. So what would happen is if this gets approved, the teachers would work 10 less days from 187 to 177. And every calendar following that would also have 10 less days. But their pay is not affected at all. So there's no decrease in pay. Now, their wellness weeks, when we're off on those Mondays, we call them wellness weeks. Those days, actual hours on site will equal 36 hours, but they'll get paid for 40 because they're considered a wellness hour Tuesday through Thursday. So their pay is still the same. They're still going to work 40 hours a week, except for those short weeks, they're going to only work 36. Vacation days,
We'll
yeah.
draw it up for you, Ms. Limon, Board of Trustees, we'll draw it up. But this is just for us to, if the board is willing to amend the District of Innovation, so we can take the next steps forward to continue to look into the 4-day student day. Again, because not a work,
Right.
it's not a 4-day work week, it's a student 4 days. And eventually we still have to send out surveys back to our staff, back to the community. And then we would like to share the final draft to the board, and then we make a decision by then.
Well, I understand. I know this is the teachers. I'm just looking at, once this gets approved, now we're looking at the hourly rate people. We're not talking about that right now. We're only talking about the teachers, which I love the teachers, don't get me wrong. Love the teachers, but I really do looking into the hourly rate till we approve something and say, well, you approved it and the hourly rate, this is what's happening to them. I'm like, I don't want to be in that pickle. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And if I may, Ms. Dimon, right now, you're just seeking permission from the board to amend the policy, the DOI, so that we can then continue to move forward with exploring the option of whether or not that 4-day student week is even possible for us.
That's correct. If
Okay.
it's not approved, then we will stick with a traditional calendar that's similar to the calendar we had this year.
I'm gonna save my question, so if and when this change in policy gets approved, I might have some additional questions. Thank you, Ms. Casey. Anybody else? Okay, moving on to agenda item 7, Ms. Casey.
Yes, this is looking at approving our new memorandum of understanding with Texas A&M San Antonio. The copy you have is a draft copy. It's basically going through all of the final pieces at TMUSA. We have not made any changes to it. So as it is, we are very happy with it. Basically, it looks at the transition of our students from high school to post-secondary and the goal of increasing academic performance and self-concept for students. What it outlines for us is how are we going to collaborate? Who is responsible for curriculum? Who is responsible for student progress? Who is responsible for communication? The courses of study. This early college, the pathways that are offered are going to be, they'll have 12-hour options, 15, 30, 42, and 60-hour pathways for all students mapped out throughout TMUSA. That is not something that we have with our current partners. That will largely depend on when a student qualifies for TSI, what a student is interested, what is their pathway going to be when they study. So students will still be able to have STEM. We will still have a STEM designation because that is actually from the state. But they also will have other opportunities to explore different areas. Education, that's something that we have partnered with Texas A&M San Antonio. And so they will have many opportunities to extend in different pathways. This also includes what the cost will be, what curriculum will be, how testing will be, who is responsible for that. I'm very excited to see there's a component about how they will involve parents. That is a component that we do not see with our current partners, and how they educate parents and bring parents into, because for parents, many of them, this is their first time and their first experience with college as well. It talks about books and supplemental reading and how we will go about when a student maybe does not meet expectation. What does it look like when a student's on probation, or what happens when what is the recourse for them, and what are the supports? This is kind of an MOU that is pretty standard in as far as what we have had with other districts. The other benefit will be is that our students will have priority when it comes to Greater Texas Foundation Scholar programs. They will have a priority. They have a very few partners, and they'll be able to apply for up to $2,000 a year that's renewable after they graduate from high school. Other than that, the other one is basically data support, FERPA, if we have to sever the partnership. We're very excited about our partnership with TMUSA. This first start, the approval of this MOU will allow us to start communicating with parents, kind of marketing and how bringing more kids in. We do have a recruiting class already in for this year, but this will be communication for our incoming 8th graders and 9th graders that are rising. They'll tour the community. So this approval of this MOU will allow us to start with our partnership with them.
I have a question.
Okay.
I don't know if I can ask. Redirect me if you need to. You said when our 8th graders, 7th and 8th graders start touring. Is that what you said right now? I'm sorry, Ms. Casey.
Our current 9th graders are at Palo Alto. They will transition to Texas A&M San Antonio.
Okay.
They will start. And
Okay.
we will start, they'll apply to Texas A&M San Antonio. They will register. So they're already prepared to start registering for fall. We can't move forward until we've approved our MOU.
Okay, that's exciting. I wanted the clarification on that, so thank you so much. But let me ask you this: what are we doing, if anything at all, on those students that are not currently in our district to entice them to come to our district because of the partnership that we are looking to have?
So at this point, it's a secret until the MOU is signed.
There's a lot going on here, Ms. Casey.
Once this is signed, that's when they'll be able to start marketing and we will be able to start marketing.
Okay.
But we
perfect.
currently do accept any students out of district as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, if I may, Madam Chair. So I know I referenced some questions, Mr. Soto. It seems as Ms. Casey's kind of embedded some of those responses. I just want to make sure that we're clear because I know at this point, I'm already having some colleagues and friends that are now their kids are entering their freshman year. And they're very open and excited about the possibility of joining us at STEM. And so one of the things was, you know, the 42 and 60, I think we got to make sure when we do communicate to our parents that, you know, we do obviously know that the partnership with PAC has been dissolved, but that, you know, we still have that designation from the state with STEM, because I think some were concerned that, hey, we're no longer going to be able to be considered that, which, like you said, is not true. And also just the 60 hours and how it's much more beneficial and it maximizes the opportunities for our students. And it gives them the opportunity to follow any pathway, every avenue that goes pretty much in higher ed. So I know the associate's degree is one thing that entices people to be like, oh, they get an associate's degree and a high school diploma. But I wonder how we can you know, reimagine that narrative, because then we can say, yeah, oh yeah, the associates, and not to marginalize it or anything like that either, but to say, hey, we're going to continue on with providing them that exceptional educational experience.
And I think the difference is associate's degree or core complete. And if you're core complete, once you get out of high school, then you can start on.
And that's perfect, because I mean, to me, the basics, just saying, hey, you get the basics done, I think is great, because I know with STEM, usually the pathway is science, technology, engineering, or math. And some people forget, like, oh man, I'm not really interested in that. I'm more liberal arts. And then I'm having to go do upper level division of math, and I'm like, that's calculus and these other type of pieces don't work for me. So you know, I think it's great. It's a fantastic partnership. Mr. Soto and team, thank you again for, you know, finding ways to be innovative and providing us avenues to support our kids.
And just Ms. Cavazos, when you were a 7th and 8th grade do tour, but we also have our 5th graders that tour, Temisa, at the end of the year every year.
Thank you. I did not know that. Not to mention, Mr. Moreno, the money that those students and families will be saving. Oh, my goodness. Yes. I know. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 8. Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Soto and Superintendent. Presented this evening is our investment report for the quarter ending December 31st, 2022. Page 50 is the transmittal that provides the information as far as the amounts of investment in cash in each of our funds. Beginning with our general fund, we have $46.9 million in our general fund in cash and investments. It's an increase over last quarter by 12 million. The main reason for this is that with this quarter, we received 3 monthly payments versus the 2 monthly payments that were in the prior quarter. Also, we tend to have an increase in our tax collection during the months of October through December, and I assume it's for tax purposes. There was an increase of about $5 million for that. So that accounted for the increase over the previous quarter. In our debt service fund, we had cash and investments of 23.1 million. The increase from prior quarter is 12.2 million. In November, we received the state allotments for under the instructional facilities program and the existing debt allotment program. The amount received was 10.1 million. And again, just like the general fund, we also collect the debt service component tax rate on that and received $2 million worth in property taxes. Our settlement fund had a net decrease of 524,000 net of interest earnings. The main construction payments, which are related to the stadium, was 474,000, and also related architect and engineering services of 87,000. Our next fund was facilities assessment fund,
which had 7.9 million. That was a net decrease of 512,000. This was due to construction payments, again, that were related to our high school auditoriums, replacement of HVACs, and our architect and soft costs, again, net of interest earnings. Our general facilities fund had 30.9. We're in the process. We have Arquitectura services, providing architect services to work with staff and the community and related to our bond initiatives of the CTE building, our high school baseball field lights, and our ROTC. So during that period, as planning is being done, these proceeds are being invested in order to maximize earnings. So it actually resulted in a net increase over the prior quarter of 205,000. Our last fund, our stadium fund, had 9.1 million. Again, that's the bond proceeds that we received of 9.5 million. It's a net decrease of 393,000 since those funds are being used for stadium construction, which was just progressing. And so we had a total construction payments for 468,000. Basically the earnings during that quarter range from 0.66% to 4.51%. We see the interest earnings continue to increase as the Fed increases the rates, as we've seen each time that they've met. So that will have a positive impact on our ability to bring in additional resources on our investments. Madam Chair, that concludes the report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Any questions for Mr. Hernandez? I just have a comment. I'd like when you say that'll have a positive impact on our invest. So I like that.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess no questions. But if we do, we'll email Mr. Soto and
Absolutely.
thank you, Mr. Hernandez. You have the next one too, Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, ma'am.
That's agenda item 9.
Yes, ma'am. Along with our quarterly reports, we also have a budget report that's reported each quarter for the end December 31st, 2022. The quarter ending in December, again, our budgeted revenues for the school district is 123.6 million. And our budget expenditures as of the end of December was 137.4 million. This is a budget deficit of 13.7 million. What this includes is the original budget that was passed to start the school year, which we were looking at a budget deficit of 12 million. And then during the year, we have to roll over what was budgeted in the prior year, and we actually set that aside and doesn't have an impact on our available fund balance, which is $1.7 million in outstanding purchase orders and items that are received after the fiscal year. So we have to rebudget those amounts. And again, that's a reserved amount and doesn't have an impact on the available fund balance. Additionally, in August, the board approved the transfer of the monies that were set aside for construction of 3 million. So basically, our ending fund balance at the end of 21-22 was 36.5 million. Again, when you look at the deficit from what was budgeted in revenues and expenditures to start the year of 12 million, we're projecting an ending fund balance of 24.6. What's positive out of this is that the monies that we set aside initially for construction was 3.2 million. But as you can see, as I mentioned earlier, we only needed 3 million. So that just goes to help out the fund balance. Now, when we look at the progress of our expenditures, we basically look at expenditures from September to December, which is about 4 months out of a 10-month basic operation of a school district, which is about 40%. So we should see expenditures at about 40%. And so when you look at that, in particular payroll, when you look at the budget report, it shows that it basically close to 40%. Another way to look at this is when you look at page 58 on your board book, we also provide a schedule of the different programs like instructional program, gifted and talented, special ed. We see those programs close to or around 40%. So we know they're on task. Positive that we've seen this year is that our ADA has been showing to be 100 students more than the previous school days that of the prior year. So again, our budgeted ADA is 10,171. And again, it's positive that we're having an increase in students, although slight, but still better than what it was the year before when it was at a decrease. Again, when you look at the budget report, you see an increase in the revenues of both the general fund and the debt service, in particular on the property taxes. And that's because, again, property taxes accelerate in the months of October through December. And again, we'll see another increase in property taxes when we look at the next quarter, which include January's. And again, we know that our property taxes are all due by the 31st. After February 1, they become delinquent. So then there's always an acceleration of property taxes paid during January. Our child nutrition funds and our debt service funds are also included. Our participation appears to have increased over last year in our child nutrition program. We continue to serve free breakfast and lunch varieties. We still tend to have vendor delivery problems, but again, I believe they're slowly working through those issues where we can rely on more on what we order and then try to stick to our menu that we put out. Again, we had no debt service payments during this quarter. So then again, as I mentioned earlier on the investment report, we received an increase in those state monies of 10.1 million. Madam Chair, that concludes the budget report for the quarter. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Any questions for Mr. Hernandez? No questions, Mr. Hernandez. I have one, but I'll wait because I have to word it just right.
All right. Yes.
Thank you, sir. You have the next one, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That's agenda item 10.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
So this evening, what we're presenting are the budget amendments for the February meeting. When you look on page 61 of the transmittal, it provides what those budget amendments are. There was a UIL rate increase in sports officials that was subsequently then notified to school districts. In reviewing in the review of operations by the MOS department, they were looking at current positions that are vacant and evaluating the remaining workload for the rest of the year to see if those funds may be available to support this increase that was provided again as the year started. So that would be a budget amendment, moving monies out of maintenance and operations, but ensuring that we still address the needs on the grounds of the campuses and satellite departments, and then moving that money to the function 36, which is a co-curricular activities in order to cover the sports officials increase. That's the first budget amendment, and that would be under the general fund. The next budget amendment is in our child nutrition program. We are adding the 4 additional sites to provide the summer meal programs. We currently have 2 sites as we started last year, and we started this year with Adams and Schultz. The 4 sites that will be added will be Leal, the middle school, Terra Wells, and our 2 elementaries will be Bel Air and Gilbert. Again, we're able to recruit staffing and also get through the application process through the Texas Department of Agriculture. We estimate the additional revenues during this period when the program starts on March 1st to be $58,846, and then offset with the personnel and supplies that are required in order to conduct that program at $58,846. The last budget amendment is then our donations program. We received donations from HEB Read 3 book ticks now for fine arts, RBFCU, and the American Diabetes Association. The total donation for those, and those are listed on page 61 of your board book. The total amount of donations was $3,555 that we're budgeting for the either the programs or the campuses to utilize those donated funds to them. And Madam Chair, that concludes the proposed budget amendments. Be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Any questions from my colleagues to Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Moreno.
So I guess when it relates to this, Mr. Hernandez, we're adding the additional sites for child nutrition, and you said that the total amount would offset it. So are we going to be able to see that revenue deposited towards our general fund, the 58,000?
When we earn those funds, they're restricted to the child nutrition program because those are federal revenues. We put in a claim of the number of meals served and we get reimbursed. So the restriction is it needs to remain as part of the child nutrition program. Now, the benefit of that and the way the child nutrition program has been operated, it's basically self-sufficient. So I remember several years back, every year we would always have to transfer 300,000 out of the general fund to support the child nutrition. But since then, it's been pretty much self-sufficient, and this kind of program just adds to that efficiency.
And so right now, we're overall, how many sites are doing the dinners?
Right now, we have 2, Adams and
So
Shaw,
it should be 6 together.
and then we're gonna add 4 more.
Okay. And that site throughout through the end of May, that's where you're projecting the 58,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
From beginning on March 1st, when we start the program through the end of the school year.
Well, that sounds wonderful.
Or actually, I think, believe mid-May. We have Adela Friedman. She's our new child nutrition director. Mr. Mark has left. So.
Well, it's exciting. Hopefully, Mr. Freeman, we can work well in just in increasing that revenue so we can make sure that we're having the lunches, the breakfast, and the dinners are, readily available. And then we can, have Mr. Hernandez provide us with good feedback and good insight into where the funds are going.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Mr. Hernandez, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Supplies needed and personnel. Does that also come from federal funding?
Yes, ma'am. It does.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you so much. So basically, we don't touch any of our general fund when it comes to this child nutrition.
That's correct, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Moving on to agenda item 11, is that Dr. Salinas or Miss Casey?
It's me.
Okay, Miss Casey. Go ahead, Miss Casey.
So Medicaid services provided in the school district are eligible for reimbursement through SHARS. SHARS is a cooperative effort through Texas Education Agency and Health and Human Services. It allows school districts to obtain Medicaid reimbursement for certain health-related services. This could include any nursing services for our students with special education, their personal care, evaluations they may have, counseling, even transportation. So we would like to contract MSB Consulting Group for Medicaid billing and school health related services via Choice Partner Purchasing Cooperative. Their fee is 6.5% of the district's reimbursement from Medicaid for the amount of approximately $274,000, and it's funded directly from the reimbursement that we get.
Any questions for Miss Casey? I have a question. Have we used them before, Miss Casey?
Yes, we're currently under contract with MSB, but our contract is ending this year. And so we're extending it for 1 more year. And then I believe after that year, we will go out for an RFP.
So this is the second year that they've been servicing us?
Fourth, and this might be our 4th year?
This is actually our 6th year.
Oh, 6th year.
So
Okay.
we had 3 years and then we went out for RFPs. We did another 3 years. And so on this particular one, as Ms. Casey said, this is through the co-op. We're going to do this for 1 year and then we're going to look at either the co-ops or the RFP, whatever brings the best value to the district.
Thank you very much. Any other comments for Miss Casey? Thank you, Miss Casey. Agenda item 12, is that Miss Martinez? Or who's, oh, okay, Miss Mariana. Okay, I saw website and so I just assumed. My apologies, Miss Mariana.
It's okay. Good afternoon, Board of Trustees. So as you know, we currently have a contract with Blackboard. They are the host of our website and our mass notification system. However, they were recently bought by another company called Final Site. And so Final Site had a data breach last year where thousands of their school district websites were off while they were going through this cyber attack. And so a lot of the information from this district websites was compromised. And so after speaking with our information services team, they recommended that we do not renew our contract with them. So we met with 4 different vendors. And so after meeting with these vendors, we were really looking for something that was user-friendly, I think was the biggest thing we were really looking for. As you know, we have webmasters at each campus that have to update these websites, and webmasters at each department that have to update each page on the website. And so we really want to give them something that is easy for them to keep updating. And so we met with these 4 vendors, and the one vendor that we are recommending is called Aptogee. And so they have the website hosting system as well as the mass notification system. And one of the things that we really like about them is that they also offer an app for our school district. So currently with Blackboard, we have an app. I should say we have an app because we were never really able to launch it through them because their iOS services never worked. And so with Aptogee, we will be able to have our school district app. And so we talked to other districts in the area that are currently using Aptogee. Southwest ISD uses them for their website hosting as well as their app services, and they are very happy with their services. Also, Southwest ISD only uses them for their app. Somerset ISD uses them for both website and app. And the reason Southwest ISD doesn't use them for their website services, they told me, is because they didn't know about them when they started with their website services. And so as you can see, it will cost us $45,600. That's for a 5-year contract as annual payments. So we're just recommending that we go with this vendor.
Any questions for Ms. Mariana?
If I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Moreno.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, when I see the ability to provide communication on a variety of devices and social media, that definitely piques my interest. I'm just curious as to what the app. So we're doing an app per campus. So will that kind of be able to be embedded with the social media? Like if they post something there, it automatically would be linked to their IG, their Facebook, all these other pieces as well.
Yes, so one of the things that we really liked about Aptogee is that on the back end of the website, they have the mass notification system as well as social media. And so when they update one of them, they can update all of them at the same time. They can also pick which ones they update. If they don't want to update, if they don't want to post something on the website, but only on social media, they can do that. But if they wanted to update everything at once, they can do that. And as far as the app for per campus, yes, they have an app per campus. The other thing that I really liked about Aptogee, my experience with using the app with the app with Blackboard was that it would link you to the website. So if you clicked on something on the app, it would take you to the website. With Aptogee, the app has its own thing. So if you click on the school menu pops up and it doesn't take you to the website. So I really like that service.
All right. So then I guess kind of leading to the next piece, it would be that when it comes to the I guess the contact list for the students' parents and things like that, is that already going to be uploaded, or how are they going to have access to that? Is that going to be like through Beams or?
Yes, so we connect through a sender. So all of our student information and parent information is through a sender,
okay.
and so they speak to each other, and so every night it updates on their system.
So that would be updated information, because I know sometimes that's still lagging, and sometimes we have to input information just manually.
Yes.
So
as long as the PEMS clerks are updating it on a sender, then a sender will talk to Aptogee and they will update every day.
And is there also an ability, like I know our staff, sometimes they transition from one campus to another. If they're the web host, how do we make sure we disable their activity versus giving it to another person? Is that readily, or is that user friendly, user accessible?
Yes, so as a district, we will have the access for all of that. So my office will be able to control that. But one of the things that we really like about this service as well is that they offer free trainings. With Blackboard, we've been having to pay for extra trainings if we wanted them. But with Aptogee, they offer unlimited trainings. And so if a webmaster were to go to a different school or a different district and we had to train a new webmaster, we could do that with their services.
So that brings up another key piece when it comes to communication, Ms. Mariana. So is this going to help you guys maximize the amount of information shared with our community? And is that going to make it easier for you guys not have to be at every single event and being able to have our webmasters for particular campuses being able to be your foot patrol out there?
Yes, that's what we're hoping for. But yes, that's always been the goal. We want the webmasters to be at the school events. And with this, I think it's a great opportunity to make sure that we keep our webmasters accountable. And so we've been working on creating kind of expectation lists on what we need them to be doing. And so with Aptogee being able to help us with these trainings, that also helps us make sure that we keep them accountable.
Okay, so I guess that last piece would be just because I know sometimes the schools are always like, oh, there's a disconnect sometimes in being able to give like, hey, I provided this to communications, but they didn't upload it. Will this make it easier for you guys to peruse through and be like, oh man, this is an awesome piece. Let me just add this to the website or let me link this here. And that will make your job easier, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Everything will be on one platform. And so we'll be able to see each campus as they're posting.
Any questions? Ms. Mariana, will they be servicing also? If something happens, if there's little glitches, they will be servicing our
Yes.
website, I guess, or our app.
Yes, they have, from what I've heard from the other districts, they have great customer service. And when we were doing the demos with them, we tested they have a chat when you go to the website, and it took them 30 seconds to reply. So we were very impressed with that as well.
Good. I'm impressed with that. I wish everybody had 30 seconds to reply when we're on those. So thank you. And any other questions? No? Well, I appreciate the thinking outside the box.
Thank you.
And I mentioned to Mr. Soto in an email about any chance we can get, and he says, Miss Mariana is going to have a presentation on that. So you're ahead of us. You're ahead of us. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you, Miss Mariana. Moving on to agenda item 13. Dr. Salinas, okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam President, school board members. This is TASB policy update 120. We do have revisions to legal policies. Those are based on updates to the Texas Administrative Code that are done periodically throughout the year. And then we have 3 policies that TASB is recommending changes to. I will direct you to page 67 for our policy CKC local, which has to deal with emergency operation plans. And this policy change requires us to put in place into our procedures something that addresses responding to a nearby train derailment. In case there's a train derailment nearby, our district procedures have to address that now. This has also, I did share this also with Mr. Forestier, our emergency person, and he is taking care of that and making sure that that's going to be in our policy, in our procedures, excuse me. The next policy is FNG local that deals with complaints and grievances, in particular with from students and parents. And if you'll notice on that page, really it's just a change and some wording changes there, where they put complaints within the scope of section 504, including complaints, and they removed it from that later on in that paragraph. Same thing with on paragraph 9, they just again moved that, and this has to deal with IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, including complaints. So it lets them know just a little more clarity, I guess, in those 2 paragraphs. And also on that one, it deals with number 14, complaints concerning disputes, anything that has to deal with eligibility for free or reduced lunch. It references our policy COB for any parents who have complaints with that. This was also shared with our 504 coordinator and our special ed director as well. And the last policy change is for, I believe it's, let me get to it. FO local, which deals with student discipline. And on this one on page, the changes on page, starts on page 78, where you see they've added a note that district employees may restrain a student with a disability who receives special education services only in accordance with law. And it does remove a section that allows for restraint for control of irrational students. So that will no longer be there. And those are the changes for that policy update. Any questions for Dr. Salinas? Dr. Salinas, we have to have the number 14 in place, although we don't have whether you qualify for reduced or free lunch. Correct.
Thank you.
in case there's a complaint from a parent regarding free or reduced lunch.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions or comments? for
If I may,
Dr.
Madam Chair, just one thing,
Yes, Mr.
and
Martin.
maybe Dr. Salinas can enlighten me, but what was deemed an irrational student before? Is that someone that was trying to harm themselves or?
So you can have an irrational student who's not necessarily physically aggressive. So you wouldn't necessarily have to restrain an irrational student. And so now they've removed that for protection, I'm guessing, of the student and the adult.
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Manta.
if I may, Mr. Soto, how many staff members are trained per campus?
It's going to be all of our special education staff members are trained, administrators as well.
Does that include what do they call them on the hallways, hall monitors?
Hall monitors. I don't know. I'll have to check on that, but I can get you that information.
Mainly because I know there was an incident in Harlendale Middle School, even though the parent was okay with it. But the hall monitor was the one that ended up
Restraining.
restraining the child.
Okay. I can check. I can get you that list of staff members who are trained.
Any other questions for Dr. Salinas? Okay, Dr. Salinas, and you went through 13, 14, and 15?
I have the next one that's on FO local, which is
Oh.
this is not a TASB update, but it's a Harlandale ISD request.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's
Go ahead.
okay. And this one is actually to remove the section on corporal punishment. So I was told that this has been brought up a couple of times through different reviews of our policy. And I did some just some history on it. For the safety of students and staff, additional recommendation revisions to this local policy include removing this section on corporal punishment. Corporal punishment has not been used as a form of discipline since 2004-2005 school year, according to our disciplinary codes. So when I check with people personnel and ask them how long ago was it that somebody was either paddled or had some corporal punishment, and that was the last time that it was utilized here in Harlandale ISD. So the recommendation would be found on page 82, where you'll see TASB actually crossed everything out, but did put a section in there that says the board prohibits the use of corporal punishment in the district. Students shall not be spanked, paddled, or subjected to other physical force as a means of discipline for violations of the student code of conduct.
Any questions for Dr. Salinas on that? I think it was clear and transparent, your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 15?
Yes, Madam President, this is our ELA, this is our charter authorizing policy that I referenced in the Senate Bill 1882. We currently do not have a charter authorizing policy, so this would authorize the district to begin looking at possible partnerships for Senate Bill 1882. It is on page 87 of your board book will start the policy, and it goes all the way to page 95.
And this is merely to,
This will outline all the process from authorization to even ending the even ending the partnership if it doesn't work out. It takes us from authorizing the policy to doing the call out, the application process, the board that they have, the data collection and what they're obligated to, all the way through to in the event it doesn't work out and how we sever that relationship.
thank you, Ms. Casey. Thank you so much for that. Any questions for Ms. Casey? Thank you, Ms. Casey. Agenda item 16, is that Mr. Hernandez? Oh, Dr. Salinas, sorry.
No, you're fine. Thank you, ma'am. This is actually to consider and take appropriate action on a resolution to compensate employees during the district closure that occurred on January 31st and February 1st. So as you know, we had severe weather those 2 days. It was hazardous for students and employees to come to work. And so we were not at work. And so we're asking that the board please consider a resolution so that we can compensate employees and not have to make up that time or those days.
Dr. Salinas, this is hourly employees?
This is all Harlandale ISD employees.
All of them. Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? No questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Salinas. Agenda item 17. Ms. Martinez.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board and Superintendent Soto. Using digital clickers for electronic voting is increasingly being adopted in different settings, including meetings, events, and workshops. Digital voting clickers are ideal in that they are easy to use, but also provide authenticity to the voter. One clicker, one vote. They provide flexibility. You can edit your vote up until time that voting is closed. And they assist with data recording and tabulations of reports. Data can be extracted and reports generated. Amanda and Tony will demonstrate what the recommended clickers can do, and you will see how the votes are taken and what the people will see.
Good evening. I'm going to show you how this product works. So if you turn your attention over here. For this example, I set up roll call and a few agenda items. You'll notice here, if the operator clicks this vote green icon, you will then see this screen. It's not going. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So this is how it'll look. On the upper right corner, you'll see green for yes, red for no, and yellow for abstain. Each agenda item will have its title, whatever you guys decide to title it. All names will be located underneath. Once the vote has been opened, all your votes will turn blue once your vote has been registered. On the top right corner, you will see a total of 7 members that have voted. You can now click to close the vote. And now all your votes will be visible to the public. Let's begin by starting a mock test. I will now pass out the clickers. Where's the remote? Okay, so my other picture was on the other PowerPoint, but it's okay. So if you take a look at your clickers now, you'll see green for yes, red for no, and yellow for abstain. When you select your number that you would like, you'll see it on the LCD screen. Tony will launch a vote now. Open vote. You can click any color right now to select your vote. And you can also change your vote in the middle of your decisions right now. Any vote will not register until it is officially closed. So Mr. Luna isn't here, so
Because-
his vote will not.
So blue means we voted. If
Blue
if your
means-
name is shaded in blue, that means we already put a vote in there.
Yes, your vote has been accepted, but it is not official until it is closed
So,
We'll know how we voted.
by the number that is located on your LCD screen.
so let's say right now I want to switch my vote. Will it still stay blue?
It will stay blue, but you can switch in the middle of your,
And I just
Wow,
saw that
so-
it did switch
Yes,
from my number here.
exactly.
Okay, okay. Uh-huh.
so in an official board meeting, you will be the one who decides when the vote is now closed. And you will tell the operator when it is closed. Tony, you can close the vote now. And now all of your votes are visible.
Okay. Uh-huh. I like that. I know. Uh-huh.
Congratulations, you have now casted your votes. I will pass it back to Ms. Martinez.
Thank you, Amanda.
Uh-huh. I was gonna say, can you tell who asked Mr. Soto? Any chance we can look into a clicker?
Way too many abstains up there. Staff recommends the Meridia Interactive Solution Town Vote Clicker voting system. Among other large companies, this is the product that is used by NASA, Microsoft, Hershey's, and the U.S. House of Representatives. This is what they're using. As was demonstrated, the use is intuitive. The system ensures that voting is secure as it uses a proprietary radio frequency protocol with multiple layers of security. The closed circuit system has a short range that means that only people in the immediate vicinity can vote, and only the keypads in the bundle work with the pre-configured base antenna. If a clicker is lost, it can be prevented from voting by removing it from the required participants list. This is a one-time purchase. There are no annual fees, no additional subscription fees. And if approved, the funding will come from the district's general fund.
Let me ask this, Ms. Martinez, and maybe that might not be a question for you, it might be more of a question for the board. When I am to close the vote, do I do it in the same manner as I usually say, I'm going to take the vote now? I'm a little, right now I just say, okay, I'm going to take the vote, boom, 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 roll call on it. And now I have to give them some time to vote and consider changing their vote, correct?
Correct. I mean, you would see that it was blue. At that time, you could make a statement that would say, we're about to close the vote.
Okay,
And then you would say, operator, close the vote.
okay.
And at that point, so you're not actually like trying to do it
No,
yourself. on the
and I'm just saying,
computer.
I don't want to not
Yeah.
give them time to change their mind if they feel that they need to, but I don't want to rush anybody. But I get what you're saying. Yes. Okay. Okay. Practice, I guess. Any questions for Ms. Martinez?
Ms. Cavazos,
Yes, Dr. Castleberry.
I'm wondering if there's memory. Is there some kind of recording so that Ms. Patty will have the record if?
Yes, there is. And one of the things that we liked about this that we were asked to look at is the fact that we can run reports off of it. So for example, let's say we would have to be very clear in what the agendas were called. But for example, let's say at some point, Mr. Soto wanted a report on all the voting that happened that related to roofs. Then we could go in and pull anything that had roofs and see what those items were, when they happened, how they were voted. So yes, ma'am, there is.
Madam Chair, when they showed the demo, as you can attest, Ms. Patty can attest, and Ms. Lucia and Dr. Hinojosa's AA, when we're going through his roof litigation, it took man hours to go through board agenda items because they had asked from records from 2012 to present on anything that had roofs on board agenda items. So with this item, I know it's efficient with voting and it's a little uncomfortable, just, you want to hear your voice heard, but with this, if we put the agenda item that pertains to the agenda items that we have, and when they ask for these records, Ms. Martinez looked up to see if we can expedite that and be able to pull up, okay, in 2012, y'all did talk about roofs, April 2012. So that's something that could help us out down the road.
Madam Chair.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Ms. Timon.
Is this something that you download and he's who's in charge of this? Who's going to take control of this?
I think that's something that still needs to be decided, but right now Tony is running it. One of the things with the purchase is that it does allow us as a district to install it on as many computers as we need to. So it could be on the computer that he's managing, or in some districts, the board secretary runs that. So it just depends on what this district would decide to do.
Mr. Moreno.
Yes, so in regards to this, Ms. Martinez, or I guess Mr. Soto, would most of these like consent items, things like that, would they be already pre-filled? Or is that something that, because I mean, I know for efficiency it makes sense, but then if we're actually having to, like, okay, I'm gonna have to type in the new thing right here, the consent item or the individual item, is that like, because you're saying that's how you maintain a record, right? You have to have the total item listed.
Correct. They would all be pre-filled. This would be the the means that we would use to generate the agenda.
Okay, and then the other item would be when it comes to, we make a motion and then somebody would like to make a subsequent motion. Because obviously that wasn't pre-filled, would that be impacted, Tony, or how would that work, Mr. Resendez?
That we would have to take notes, just to keep track of who made the motion, then if it was. And I'm sure the system would allow you to do just a general.
Yeah, I like the idea. I think it is more efficient, but I know sometimes it might, we might have to clog the system by doing something, where we have to we have to revise this or revise that. And then also just in terms of Robert's Rules of Order, how do we approach that? Do you know yet, Tony?
Yeah, I don't think it'd be too much of a problem. I think really just knowing that it's a tool to help, but if we need to do something different to accommodate what the board needs to do at that moment, we could.
So it'd be something like, all right, I moved to such and such person. All right, seconds it. All right, go ahead. We're gonna have discussion, no discussion, boom. Ms. Cavazos goes ahead and says, all right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and call for the vote. Go ahead and proceed with your clicker, something like that.
Yeah.
And then boom, all right, we're gonna stop the voting and then, all right, and then the motion is such and such, and then motion carries or whatever, or motion, it'd just be that simple.
Yep. Yeah. Because I think there's been a couple times where we may have had more than one motion on a single agenda item just because, we needed to. So I would hope that would allow us to do, to take more than one vote if you needed to. Yeah, generic kind of vote, but we would keep track of it.
Other,
Yeah, I think
B
we'll get pretty familiar with it pretty quick. I just know it'll take a little time, so hopefully it doesn't impact us when it comes to how we're being documented in terms of.
At the end of the day, if it doesn't work, we just do it the old fashioned way, and Patty will take notes. And
I was gonna say, we're not getting rid of Patty.
yeah, but good question. Good question. Yeah, we'd have to see if that and play with it in those situations.
Yes, Mr. Mancha.
I heard you say that other districts are using it.
Other districts are using either this or something like it. Judson,
So
for
maybe
example.
we can just contact them and kind of get an idea how they've done it. That can be resolved pretty easily, following that guidelines. And
We watched,
just go through the other districts and see how they done it.
Judson ISD is using something similar. We watched one of their board meetings, and they're used to it. So when they were voting, the votes were taking like 6 seconds on average. So it was. Real
Yes,
fast.
I watched it and it's,
Yeah.
I mean, boom, 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 real efficient.
Very efficient.
Yeah, they're not rushing to vote. It generates it and on to the next one and on to the next one. Yes, it is impressive to watch. Yes. Yes, Mr. Resendez.
Does this have an ability to because if I recall, Judson allows you to if you want to ask or you want to during discussion, you can push a button. The board president just looks at, okay, who signed up next to talk? Does it have that function?
Oh, okay. So she's telling me yes.
For a motion?
No. Well, after a motion's made and there's discussion. Right. But then there's discussion and right now everybody just raised their hands. But I think at Judson, they push a button and then it's like, okay, who's in queue next?
They do. The board president will then know, oh, it was Ms. Limon who hit to discuss before Mr. Moreno. And so that's how they go kind of in order. Does that make any sense?
We didn't see that on this. If you look at the clicker, there are other buttons that are there.
Yes.
Those currently they're deactivated. We just activated the first 3. We can look and see if maybe one of those buttons can be used for that, because there's several. If you look at several.
Could you? I mean,
Sure,
if that's not too much to ask,
no,
just
of course.
curious, because you're right, that it gives them an idea of who wants to speak next. And it kind of just, puts it in order. I don't pick Mr. Mancha before I pick Ms. Ortiz, even though she had called my name out first or, stuff like that.
Sure. We can see if we can program those to do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any questions for Ms. Martinez? No? Thank you, Ms. Martinez.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 18.
No,
No, yeah. Who's 18? I'm sorry. Dr. Hinojosa. Yes, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. For this particular item that's on page 109, you're in the board book. Staff will recommend on Monday approval for the final pay application for Joris General Contractors. If you can remember back in May 2021, Joris was approved to do the construction, the renovations at both auditoriums and also at the parking lots, and it was budgeted at 13.9 million. After all the construction, architecture fees and all the soft costs, they actually were under budget by $65,700. So that came back to the district. But their final payment for to complete the work is at $31,160.64. So on Monday, we'll be recommending that be approved for their final pay app.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. And this is not bond money. This is a project we started before we even discussed going out to a bond, correct?
Right. Yes, ma'am. It's a combination of maintenance tax notes money and construction sources and also the settlement fund.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Any questions for Dr. Hinojosa? Okay, thank you, sir. Moving on to agenda item 19, Dr. Hinojosa.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So this particular item, we would request the civil engineering services for CDS Murray over for the ROTC building over at McCollum High School. So Arquitectura SA has completed the design phase. And so now that moves into the next component of it, which is the civil engineering, which will include designs for the grading, the drainage plan, the fire protection also for the sites, and then also the dimensional controls when it comes to the area that we'll utilize. So CDS Murray, if approved, would perform those services. They were a part of the RFQ that was approved back in September.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Any questions? Okay, thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Agenda item 20. Is that you?
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am. I
Hinojosa?
have
Thank
the
you.
next
Okay.
two. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity. We have this particular item is for Allied Fire Protection Services. So we originally had contracted with Allied in the past, but the contract expired for the school year of 21-22. In order for us to be able to utilize their services again for not just for the inspection, but also for any detection and just to work overall in our fire alarm systems throughout the school district, we would need to be able to put them back on contract. The contract, if approved, would start next month in March and would run through March of 2024. So at this time, if it did get approved, they would go on for 1-year renewal options where we'll review the work that they've done with the district and to make sure that it's in the best interest of the district to stay with them and as for them to provide services for our fire alarms.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. I have a question. You said we've used them before. How many times before?
So we've used them, their last contract was very similar to this one. It was 4 1-year options, and I can get the actual dates for that, but the last 1 year of the renewal ended in October. But I can get that information for you to provide like more of a history, but we did have a 4 1-year sequence with them as well.
If you don't mind, if it's not a lot of trouble, and if you have that information, I would appreciate
Yes,
it. I'm
absolutely.
just curious.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we can provide that information.
Any questions for Dr. Hinojosa? Okay, moving on. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Ortiz, I apologize.
On this particular one, can we get a little bit more detail? Just that where you said that it was going to be from March 2023 to March 2024, and that it has 4 1-year options for renewal.
Renewal, yes, ma'am.
Can that be included in that particular item? Yes. Can we? put
It's
that?
on the recommendation worded that way, so I don't know if
Well,
okay.
We had the 1 year.
what he said.
Yeah, it's-
What he said.
Yeah, it's in the recommendation, but you want that part on the agenda?
Well, I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you
Because
could.
it's as part of the record
Well,
is what
it's-
I'm asking. Because this is going to be a consent item, is it not? On Monday?
Mhm.
No, not a. All I'm asking is because remember.
You
when
can
it
legally, there's
initially-
nothing wrong with doing it
when-
if you
when-
want.
Well, I'm just asking because when initially we looked at it, it was for a cost over $50,000 and it had no period of time that it was that it was for. But Mr. Hinojosa, Dr. Hinojosa said that tonight, that it's for a specific period of time. Do you remember me asking about that?
So it's a calendar year starting March.
Right.
March 25th. And then we'll report how much spent. And then we can renew, bring back the renewal. It's 1 year renewal options.
Thank you.
We're gonna add that to the agenda item just to be clear and transparent.
Yes,
Correct?
Ken? Yeah, we'll make that addition to the agenda item.
Okay.
For Monday's meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Any questions for Dr. Hinojosa on agenda item 21?
Madam Chair.
Was it 21? No, it was 20. I apologize. Yes. Yes, Ms. Limon, I'm sorry.
Dr. Hinojosa, when did Allied Fire Protection has not been working with our district?
When have they not been working?
Yeah,
Since in October? The contract expired in October. In October?
So we didn't have nobody coming in to check our.
No,
who do we
we've had other fire alarm companies. Allied has had the experience of working with our schools, so they have some familiarity with our schools. And so because their contract expired, we have to renew it.
Okay, so you have people coming in
Yes,
between October and.
yes, ma'am. That's a great question. But yes, we have had other fire alarm companies come in. It's just the purpose of this is to get back on contract with them because of familiarity with our schools.
And I know this is coming out in March, but are we gonna go back to starting a school year? I mean, would it start in the school year, end the school year, or why is it starting in March? I know we're approving it in March, but.
It started in March because the contract ended in October and we didn't realize that it had ended in October. So when we went back to review our files, then we realized that it had expired in October. So that's why we wanted to bring it to the board meeting.
Okay.
For,
Thank you,
yeah,
Dr.
to avoid a break in service.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, sir.
Anybody else? Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Agenda item 21, is that you also, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Last one for me. So this particular item, it's requesting or recommending that we have 3 buses that would need some attention. Our mechanics do an outstanding job of working with our white fleet and our buses for just the general repair and to making sure that they're safe and on the roads. But these 3 particular buses, the work that they need in terms of transmission and some of the heavy repairs that they need kind of exceed the space and the equipment that we have that our mechanics have. So Kyrish Truck Service, or Truck Center, which specializes in working with these medium and heavy duty trucks and buses, they'll be able to provide the services to work on some of the heavier parts of this, which is, again, it's related to transmission repair and just some items that we just don't have the space or the equipment to be able to work on.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Yes, Ms. Limon?
Dr. Hinojosa, is this the first time we're using this trucking business or trucking center?
No, we've used them for repairs in the past and to purchase the heavy duty tires that our buses require. But for this particular work, this is the first time we've used them because, again, it involves the transmission work and they specialize in that because they're also a vendor for that type and they work on that type of bus, which are the buses that need that type of repair.
Oh, and also, is this our older buses, newer buses?
They're not our newest buses, but they're not extremely old either. They were in our fleet and they're very capable of still transporting our students safely. That's why we want to make sure we get the work done to get them back out on the road.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
And they're local, right?
I'm sorry?
Are they local?
Yes, ma'am. They're in San Antonio.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Any other questions for Dr. Hinojosa on agenda item 21? Okay, moving on to agenda. Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Moving on to agenda item 22, is there a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Simon?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second.
I will take the vote. Give me one second. I know, where's the clicker? I'm just kidding. No, because what if we make a mistake? No. Let's just leave it. Let's just leave it like that. I don't want to make a mistake adjourning the meeting. Mrs. Carrillo, yay or nay to adjourn tonight's meeting?
Yay.
Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Limon, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you, Mr. Mancha, yay or nay? Yay. Thank you, Mr. Moreno, yay or nay?
Yay, ma'am.
Mrs. Ortiz, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you. Myself, yay. It is 8:32. Tonight's meeting is adjourned. Thank you.